Oh, that's a good one, Eldritch fan. If you could write a Universal Monsters cinematic universe, would you do it? Abso-freaking-lutely. That's probably one of the only ones that I would do. You know, people ask a lot, and they ask me all the time, and I know some people like to talk about this. I know Fan Man loves to talk about it. You know, how can we fix DC and Marvel? How can we, you know, and people said, Prof, what would you do? All right, if you're in charge now, what would you do for DC? And I can't answer that question because I'm kind of so beyond that question. I think it's so dead. I mean, I love the DC characters. I'll always love the dear stories that I've, enjoyed. And no one will ever take that from me. But there's no going back and fixing DC and Marvel comics or the DC cinematic universe or the Marvel cinematic universe. There's no fix to it. Culture is so broken right now that there's not a culture that could receive and support any of those incarnations of things, you know? I'm not at all even remotely looking for James Gunn's Superman to be any kind of good. But I hope, I mean, I'm hope against hope that might be, but even if it is, it wouldn't mean, oh, there's hope. We're saved. We're going to get some good DC. No, it doesn't. It means that it would mean that one DC movie slipped through that was good. The culture in Hollywood and in the cinema goers' seats isn't there to support or sustain and even receive, you know, a really good, well-crafted universe. But you asked about Universal Monsters. That hasn't been sufficiently deconstructed and crapped all over yet by woke Hollywood. I mean, they've tried and they've certainly started on the bandwagon of it, but I still think there's hope that that could be done, and I would love that because, you know, I talk primarily about superheroes on my channel, but man, I do talk about monsters and monster archetypes a lot as well, especially towards, you know, the fall. I would love that. Would definitely love that. In terms of how I would do it, that's I mean, that's a big question. I have to think about that a lot more, you know. I would give each movie their due. I wouldn't worry about crossing over yet. I would let it happen organically like the original films did. You know, once they had pretty much done what they could do with the Wolfman, then it was like, you know, I mean, you couldn't really have a Wolfman Part 2 because just the same thing, it would just be the same thing. Larry Talbot or somebody else, if it was somebody, you know, once you've done the Wolfman story, the tragic pathos of the, you know, even a man who's pure of heart and says his prayers by night can become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms in the full autumn light, or full moonlight. That's you know, that's a story. You need to have an idea for a second one. So, like, you know, Frankenstein, great. Now the Bride of Frankenstein. Let's bring it, you know, and that was a totally different aspect to the story. You know, James Whale's second movie was a classic. Dracula, you had Daughter of Dracula, Son of Dracula, a little weird, but even the Mummy, you had some different takes on it. So it was natural. What do you do with Wolfman then? It was kind of interesting. Let Frankenstein meet the Wolfman and see how that goes. And that was a really cool pairing too. Yeah, I think there's so much to be done with that. I grew up watching Monster Squad and grew up on the Universal Monster movies. Loved that kind of stuff. Man, loved it so much. I would really have a blast with that. I can't give you a lot of details because I haven't really thought of it so much, but man, I would have a blast with that. That would be a lot of fun. I've always it's sad to me right now that the Universal Monsters aren't a part of public consciousness as much as they were. I mean, those movies were made, what, 30s and 40s? And I think 39, was that Dracula? I'm getting numbers, but, you know, 30s, 40s. And those representations of those iconic monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy, whatever, that was the go-to in people's minds through the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s. Even the 90s, when, you know, they were remaking a lot of these movies, companies were still putting out toys for children that looked like these monsters. Remember there was a Burger King kids meal, I think in the 90s, that had these monster figures that looked like the Universal monsters, and that's unheard of today. Our culture today is so broken that it can't even think 15 minutes ago. It would never be able to hold on to something and let an icon sit, you know, and do proper cultural work for more than a decade, you know, more than a few minutes, but to say less of many decades. So I love that the Universal monsters could do that, and I would love to try to bring them back in some which way. I mean, the monster stories themselves are public domain, not the universal take on them, but the monsters themselves are public domain. So who knows? I mean, we could do some stuff. It'd be interesting. Yeah, plus, I said, yeah, the movie Van Helsing was trying to do it. I rather liked it. I liked Van Helsing too. It wasn't a great movie. It wasn't even quite the caliber of film that, say, the his Mummy remake was. That was pretty great. But I thought it was fun. It was fun. I would have done some things differently, but it was fun. I also enjoyed the animated film that they did, which was a prequel to the Van Helsing movie. And the animated film was a story about him going after Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Because you remember at the beginning of Van Helsing, it starts with him like um, chasing Hyde across the rooftops of Paris. And he said, "Hey, I missed you in London." And Hyde's like, "No, you didn't." And he holds his arm up and there's like a bullet hole through it. Well, the animated film is the story of him hunting Hyde in London. And there's some really cool aspects of that, like with Queen Victoria and all kinds of stuff. It was pretty interesting. So yeah, and I liked it when Van Helsing came out because that's when they released all of the special editions of the Universal Monster films on DVD with the little busts and everything. And I still have all those editions. I've got everything from Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy, Invisible Man, Creature of the Black Lagoon. Our Creature from the Black Lagoon. Yeah, it was good stuff. Really good stuff. Yeah, the Van Helsing werewolves were great, Dr. Y. That's what a werewolf should look like. And I love the Larry Talbot the Wolfman from the 40s. That was great. It was wonderful. I hate it when they do a werewolf and they just make it a dog. Or if it's too canine like. Like I very much appreciated the makeup effects and the practical effects that were like in American Werewolf in London or The Howling and stuff like that. That's cool, but I think a werewolf needs to be. I'm more interested in the wolf man. The creature that can kind of stand upright. I don't want a creature on all fours, just like a big dog running around. However hellhoundish you want to make it and terrifying you want to make it, if it's just a big dog, it's like that's too real. There are big dogs in the world that we can be scared of, so it needs to be up on its hind. It needs to be walking on 2 feet. And I love the underworld lichens. That visual representation was great. Love the Van Helsing version of it. And but yeah, so it has to be like that. I really like the visuals in who was the director? Benicio del Toro, that the remake they did of Wolfman. I'm blanking on the director's name. That was interesting with Anthony Hopkins, Benicio del Toro, Emily Blunt, I think. Was that she the one in there? That was interesting. It wasn't perfection, but it was, and I love the makeup though. The way they took the classic Wolfman makeup and modernized it somewhat. Oh, that was so good. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Yeah, Twilight just had the big dogs too, I guess. I never watched the Twilight movies because, I mean, man, you'd have to pay me. You'd have to pay me a lot to make me sit down and watch the Twilight movies. I mean, I know them. I know the gist of them. I know what they're about and stuff. And man, hard pass. Hard pass. Joe Johnston, that's right, who also directed Captain America: First Avenger, and he did the trifecta, the three movies that I love so much. I love his Wolfman remake, Captain America: The First Avenger, and Rocketeer. Kept wanting to say Rocket Man. Nope, different movie. Rocketeer. Yeah, Joe Johnston, man, he can do period so well. Not just that 40s period, but he really, what I love about his Wolfman remake is that he really honored the atmosphere of those Universal monster movies because they took place in their own little universe. It was a time long ago, but there were also elements of modern times in there. It was kind of like Batman the Animated Series, how Gotham is an amalgamation between like the 40s, the 90s, and all these different things. That's the feel that Universal Monsters movies had. They're in some sort of old world Europe, but there's also modern world touches here and there, and it's and he really captured that well in his remake, Joe Johnston's remake of the Wolfman. So yeah, it was good stuff. Now that you got me thinking about that, talking about it, I gotta get a copy. I don't think I own a copy of that. I gotta get a good, maybe a steelbook copy or something, put in my collection. I gotta watch it again too. It was interesting. I thought the father son rivalry thing was interesting. I would need to watch it. It's been a while since I watched it. I'd like to watch it again before I really talked about it in detail. But I do remember being pretty impressed by it. Not thrilled, not like, oh, this is everything I wanted from a Wolfman remake, but I remember being pretty impressed. So yeah, it was good stuff. It's good. Ghost Planet says Dracula's daughter chose woman because they're weaker prey to her. They were easy to feed on. There were some there were how do you say it? I guess homoerotic still applies to women, right? But yeah, there were some overtones in that definitely, but I don't think that was such a cool movie. They could have developed Dracula's daughter more. There were really great touches. Like, I mean, it developed it in terms of other films. Bela Lugosi was supposed to play in that movie, but I forget it was. He was building something else, or there was some sort of disagreement or something like that, and he wasn't able to be in it. But I really wished he would have. That'd have been awesome. But the relationship between her and her minion, I forget his name right now, but that was fascinating, and you could have seen that delved into a little bit more in maybe some future films or whatever. So I was a little bummed that they didn't get to make more of that. But Dracula's daughter is seen by a lot of people as the end of the classic Universal Monsters era. Like that was the golden age, closed there. Movies came, but I mean, a lot of people don't realize that Bela Lugosi only played Dracula. Well, in the classic Universal Monster movies, he only played him once in the first Dracula movie. He did play him in the I think they called him Dracula. Yeah, oh shoot, not Laurel and Hardy. the other two, the one they're always meeting Frankenstein. Just a lot of brain farts tonight going on. What were they? You guys know. You'll say it out there in a second. But yeah, he played him in that, and then he played the vampire or stuff like that in other movies. But in terms of a Universal Dracula movie, it was just that first one. So yeah, good stuff. Abbott and Costello. I knew the chat would catch up to me here in a second. Yeah. Imaginative Hobbyist says the new film Abigail is actually a loose remake of Dracula's Daughter. I don't want any of that. Thanks for telling me that. I don't want anything to do with those. Wait, Abigail. Let me see. Is that one I even know of? Yeah, there have been a couple of new like vampire or Frankenstein movies or something like that, and they're all just straight garbage. The one about the baby's brain and the woman's body, and then the one about the teenager who brings back her. They get woke all over it. Okay, so I haven't seen Abigail. This is one is new for me. You guys tell me. I imagine it's made in 2024, so chances are it's got woke, in the very fiber of its being. But maybe I'm wrong. Some good things slip through here and there. So if I am wrong, you can let me know. But yeah. Studio 96 film says Tom Cruise was kind of the nail in the coffin for the dark universe. I didn't like his Mummy at all, but I wouldn't have called him the nail in the coffin. For me, the nail in the coffin, and I don't even know if this was still Universal, but that garbage Invisible Man movie, or was it Invisible Woman? I'm forgetting which one it was now, but that was that was what said, hey, let's just take monsters now and make them nothing but stand-ins for woke ideology. And the Halloween Abomination came back and was playing into that. So I have not watched I, Frankenstein. I would like to watch that. That's on my list of watches. I actually have a comic signed by Kevin Grievo. I think it's I, Frankenstein. It's some kind of Frankenstein comic. Haven't read that yet either. But yeah, I would like to watch I, Frankenstein. That's got Sean Bean in it, right? Yeah, I was a teenage werewolf. Those were great. And Teenage Frankenstein. Those were good. The Michael Landon's Teenage Werewolf. That was good stuff. Yeah, it would be great to see a dark universe. It would be great to helm a dark universe. I would love that, because I would really try to tap into these characters psychologically, what their appeal is to society and to culture and whatnot. I would really try and tell good, solid stories about that. And